Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Reviews where today we have ourselves some tracks from an act named School of the Americas off of their 2-frame GIF or GIF of 911 240 FPS album. And if we switch over to here, we're going to be listening through two of these tracks today, Porsche Cayenne as well as close-up footage shows mosquitoes drain human blood until they burst. So here is the art here, clearly quite alternative. Nothing wrong with that. It'll be interesting to see how it sounds. So we're going to listen through each of these two tracks from start till finish. And we're going to hear what we think. Starting with Porsche Cayenne, let's go. Interesting use of vocal modulation there. I mean, like, we're kind of, how to describe it, we're kind of doing something very unusual that I haven't really come across in the last 1,000 or so reviews I've done, where we're sort of messing around with the speed of the LP that we're playing there, it's going backwards and forwards, oscillating between different tempos. I mean, is it a meme? Is the degradation and manipulation of it the creative angle we're going for? I kind of like how surreal and alternative and experimental it is. I mean, you gotta hand it to them. They're pushing way out of the box, using different tracks to create one overall amalgamation, twisted and just completely wild. But there is a sense of musicality to it nonetheless. I mean, the use of these original tracks, I don't think they're created by the musician. I might be wrong, but if it's not their original stuff, it's transformative enough for it to be fair use. I mean, it does definitely remind me of Vaporwave. It's a lot more aggressive than a lot of the Vaporwave I've listened to in the past, though. Is this indicative of the direction of the genre nowadays? Or was that wah 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 kind of meant to be the sound of the Porsche Cayenne? I feel as if I should be more confused than I am. I mean, I could understand there were different tracks that were chopped and they were different and kind of put together in different patterns. Some were overlapped with others, some were pitch shifted, sped up. There was variations with the tempo of the individual components there that were mixed around in the earlier stages. There were some Foley sounds like that, blah, 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 which is like a car alarm or something like that. You know, we had interesting synth fluctuations as well. there was dynamic range to it, so that was pleasant. It wasn't the same intensity the whole time. I think that would have absolutely killed it if we had had the same level of loudness across the arrangement, but we clearly have an understanding of how music fundamentals work. None of this is accidental. It doesn't sound like a track that's been put together by someone who doesn't know how to fit the pieces. It's just a very different way of doing music than a majority of stuff I listen to, and I like the fact we're trying to do something, especially in the way where even if we didn't necessarily agree with, the style we're going for, it's more a case, it's like extreme version of a lot of the electronic music and the sampling that happened in the low 2010s, and it's like we're now making tracks into instruments, like entire songs into instruments, and using them together and using 3 or 4 per thing to make a sound. It's really fascinating, the evolution of that. I mean, I wasn't bored, put it that way. We got track number 2 for today out of the 13-track album. Close-up footage shows mosquitoes drain human blood until they burst. Is this the sound of the mosquitoes draining the blood? Is this meant to be a thoroughly uncomfortable, anxiety-inducing fever dream? Yeah, close-up footage shows mosquitoes drain human blood until they burst. Is that like the mosquito slowly draining blood as they go along, getting bigger and bigger, and the music getting bigger and bigger, and like the slurping going faster and slower, and then like it gets huge and there's this big explosion at the end with the mosquito just losing, like ending it all? Man, what is this? I wanted to go straight into the conclusion, but I'm not quite done with this track yet. I think that this one in particular, it's such a short form factor, was more of a through composed piece. There was that one theme, but it was so demented and twisted and sort of fucked up with the way that we scuffed and transitioned between the various key changes and pitch switches and all that. And we added extra bits of sub bass there, and we kind of went up high, and there were extra overdubs and reverse takes of other vocal tracks, etc. It's wild, man. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on here which suggests to me that this isn't our first rodeo, and we do clearly know what we're doing. We know what we do to sort of make something far less kind of normal or normie and like far less vanilla and just, yeah, okay. Welcome to the conclusion of my review of these tracks from an act named School of the Americas off of their 2-frame GIF of 9/11 240 FPS album. What are these tracks about? I don't really think we can take the lyrics of the songs that seriously. It could have had, Porsche Cayenne could have had something to do with the Porsche Cayenne. Close-up footage shows mosquitoes drain human blood until they burst could have. My best guess is that they're trying to show like the relative kind of classiness of maybe driving in a Porsche, but also their own personal comments on that. And I talked about what I thought mosquitoes drain human blood until they burst was. It also kind of sounds like one of those clickbaity articles you see on Facebook where if you click it they give you a virus. Not that I would know because I don't use Facebook and I don't miss it, but this track, you just clearly understand that you're just going to have a real wild time with it. And I do not hesitate to say that this is probably one of the most strange, deliberately strange albums I've ever listened to in my entire life. I don't think this is what I could have ever really imagined Vaporwave, because I see pretty extreme vapor, Choppatoria. Is Choppatoria a genre? Experimental noise, plunderphonics, Post-Vaporwave. Post-Vaporwave. I feel like we just got to Vaporwave. I suppose, to be fair, I started listening to Vaporwave around 10 years ago. So I guess I just didn't know there was post-Vaporwave now. I called it, though. I said that I thought it was still like the evolution of Vaporwave. So I'm glad with that. Again, like the kind of pitch shifting and different tempo scuffs of like the Vaporwave stuff, like slowing down old kind of classics and kind of making them, kind of twisting them into a different form entirety. Yeah, there's more to Vaporwave than that, but that's my very kind of brief understanding of what it's all about. It's more complicated than that. There's more nuance, but it checks the boxes, but it's also just so creepy and utterly insane sounding. It's so just complete. It makes me feel incredulous. Just like considering the implications of this track and what it means. Like, it's a niche, and there's clearly people that appreciate it. That there's been a lot of people who have purchased this album. Like, legitimately, there's lots of people that have downloaded it. They clearly enjoy it. There is a niche audience for this. And I have to admit, in a way, I think that makes complete sense because, you know, despite what a lot of musicians I work with might sort of think, there are popular genres, but there's also a large subset of people who are just sick of the normal stuff and they really want to find the new next thing or find something for their own music, if that makes sense. Or they just dig it because it sounds kind of crazy. You know what I mean? So I think that these are instrumental pieces with like vocal chops and samples and stuff like that. I don't think we were necessarily meant to listen to the words and understand what they meant. I don't think we're necessarily meant to take that much from the stories that were told, although if we were, I apologize for that. The tracks they were 3 minutes 16 and 1 minute 13 were through composed. They weren't meant to have that ABA traditional kind of structure there, and I think that's fine. You don't need it. There were a wide variety of instruments within it, though I think they were almost incidental. A lot, like there was some of the bass, drums, keys, etc. Usually had Foley or synths. The synth parts, or we had like noise filtering or distorted effects chains added to it, or it just got very, 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 very aggressive, I think with a song like, and with an album like this, it makes sense. If you want to make the listener feel uncomfortable, they did that. There were just all these, I think it was simply because of the tempo changes. It was because of the unpredictable, incredibly sort of like over-the-top transfers between sections there, kind of screaming mania in the face of traditional values musically while still understanding like kind of how to link things together in a way that ironically makes sense. The weirdest thing to me was like the melody for close-up footage shows Mosquitos. It's almost, it is like a nightmare, like a horror film listening to that, but there was a weird catchiness to that melody as well. So it's unusual that they know what they're doing to that respect, but they also managed to make it like this. It is creepy and druggy, as Jacob Maver says. I don't really know how else to describe it. I think it's simply something where it's just so subjective that you really need to listen through the entire album in context and really get the hang of it. Do I necessarily want to listen to more of the album after what it made me feel? I think it's just complete and utter, just hands down curiosity about it. It's so different that like you almost kind of wonder what they're going to do next, simply to see will it get more strange than this? Will they suddenly have a moment of respite and things come down? Are these the most extreme examples? Are there going to be things beyond this that are like a little, is this just getting started? Studio production, recording, mixing and mastering was good, considering. I mean, it was deliberately unusual and unpredictable, and it didn't want to be a well-behaved radio single by any means. It wanted to have weird tempo twists and massive changes in the loudness of stuff and really kind of violent, aggressive, stress-inducing textures in it. And there were no weird resonances in the mix. The EQing was done well. Things were nice wide in the stereo field with adept kind of like panning of stuff. Things were nice and wide in the cans. Things were notched nicely in regards to leveling as well. You could hear things clearly despite the complete lunacy going on. It was nice and low without pumping, so the bus compression limiting was handled well. I mean, this is my review of these tracks off of an album of, from School of the Americas titled 2-Frame GIF of 911 240 FPS, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go show us some love via the various social medias and Bandcamp page, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as either help more than ever thought of crazy stuff going on in the world, and I'll catch you in the next review. Spiderhands Out.